Welcome to the channel. In this video, I will be going over the Greatsword, Sword and Shield, Atlas tank build. The Great Sword altogether is a powerful weapon, but it lacks CC and mobility. Currently, compared to the Warhammer, I do not think that it will be better in large-scale PvP tanking. However, for frontline tanking and small-scale PvP, I think it has its role in terms of having good survivability and having a lot of damage. So you can contribute to your team by basically going as far into enemy territory as possible and surviving and distracting them as your team pushes objectives. So in a nutshell, frontline tanking is still a viable option for this weapon. But once again, large scale tanking just really isn't, because there's so many other weapons that outperform it from that standpoint. We've adjusted a little bit of our sword and shield bar to accommodate for that, so we've removed shield rush and we now use leaping strike, because the way that we use the sword and shield for this build is going to be slightly different. You don't necessarily need to attack with the sword and shield bar all that much. Previously with the Warhammer build, we were attacking a lot with the sword and shield bar because it was a very safe offensive weapon to use, so I could animation cancel my attacks and block spontaneously whenever I wanted and reduce a lot of damage I was taking. I also had defined stance and fortify from blocking and fortify from shield rush. All those things combined together allowed you to take a lot of damage while still safely putting in some damage. The Greatsword outperforms the Sword and Shield in offensive defense, so not taking a lot of damage while remaining offensive. Purely defensively, Sword and Shield is better than both Warhammer and the Greatsword, but for offensive defense, the Greatsword is better than the Sword and Shield. And just for pure offense with CC, it's going to be the Warhammer that's going to be better than the two other weapons. So now that we have that out of the way, let's get into what I'm wearing and all of that. So these are the attributes: 200 strength, 300 con. Not much has changed from that standpoint. If you're going to 100 constitution, then I could see rationale for a 150-150 split. It does scale equally off of dex and strength, but our back bar is primarily a strength weapon, being the sword and shield, which scales mainly off of strength. So we're going with 200 strength and 300 con for that. In terms of the skills, so let's start with the sword and shield. Primarily with this, you want everything's remained the same from before, besides taking off this perk and replacing it with this perk. So decrease your cooldowns when you block stuff, and then we're going with leaping strike. This is just to finish people off, and it's to gain distance and move. Basically, we have very little mobility on the Greatsword. We are lacking Path of Destiny that we use on the Warhammer to finish people off who are at a distance, so leaping strike is the best thing that we have at this moment. But the rest is pretty much the same. For the Greatsword, we're going with mainly the Defiance tree altogether, but we want to take as many passives here that give us damage and give us good stamina sustain. So this is going to give us extra damage. This passive can't really be used by our build, but we need it just so that we can get the rest of the passives down here. This is going to be the most important passive here. This is a good heal and gives stamina. This passive over here, just, can't hurt to have. But this is the main passive again that we want, that I just recently started using and found it was actually pretty good. And so those are the passives you want over here, and then the passives you want over here. Pretty much everything that will give us damage. So this is going to give us 3% damage. This is going to give bleeds on our heavy attacks, and you're going to be able to block projectiles. And we don't need this blocking projectile so we can close the distance. We use this so that when we're in the defiant stance and we're attacking people and using that as our primary form of defense for offense, then we want this to prevent any ranged CC from getting us. That's why this is so good for our build, is because it blocks CC. Blocking damage is okay, but I mean, we can pretty much eat that damage, like in the Warhammer Sword and Shield Atlas build. Like, we could trade with people no problem. It's the CC that's gonna get us. So this stops ranged CC from getting us. And then we have all the moves here and all the passives here, and this is just gonna be good for our lifesteal. And this is gonna be good for applying rend and decreasing the stamina. We used to have this passive before, but we removed it because I realized I wasn't really using it in combat. I could manage my cooldowns pretty effectively and use those to get in and out of combat, in and out of defiant stance as needed. This is a very useful passive, but yeah, we had to sacrifice it in order for us to get this. I think this is going to be more impactful than to have this, because sometimes this misses. The tracking is kind of weird, or maybe it's just lag, or maybe I just suck. One of those three is the reason why I miss this skill sometimes. One of those. I could just suck, which is a very big possibility. But anyways, going forward, what I'm wearing on the body. So I know there are a lot of influx of new players. I'm gonna try and go over what is mandatory and what is optional, because I've realized as I've been switching out some gear pieces, I don't really see much of a difference for a lot of this. So new players may see 625 or see legendary gear and get intimidated and like, oh, how do I even get that? And the answer is you don't really need it. And so what you do need is going to be resilient on all your pieces. So everything that I'm wearing, no matter what, has to have resilience. If I was to go butt naked, I would still want resilience on my body with no other perks. Then if you can get resilience on your body and you can afford to get another perk, for our Greatsword, you're going to want slowing rupture. So on your body, that's the only thing that you really need in terms of weapon perks. And then as we go down the rest, so for the chest, you're gonna want sturdy energy. It's not mandatory, but it's highly recommended. And the rest is honestly just resilience and 2 other perks. So you want aversion if you can get a second perk. So if your body piece has no weapon perk that you need, after you get your resilience, the next thing you need to get is gonna be aversion. So either elemental or physical aversion, whatever works. And then for the third perk, pretty much random. Like, I was trying to get all freedom, but I could only get one, and then I mean, having one piece of vigor is not going to do much for you, and reducing mass cooldowns is really good. I think that would be a useful perk to have. But yeah, as you can see, even though they have 3 perks, the third perk isn't really all that game changing, especially if you don't have the same one for all the pieces. For the shield, we have our Defiant Stance, Defender's Resolve. On this, that's the weapon perk that you need on your shield, and then Sturdy and Thrust Resistance for the bow people. And then you want Health and Divine, that's mandatory on the jewelry, and then a third perk if you can afford it. It's super expensive. I don't really care for it, and as you can see, I'm a poor dude. You can get both of these from the dungeons. Yeah, and that's all you really need for the body. So this is from Lazarus. You can get it from one of the bosses in Lazarus. If you get the purple version, you can upgrade it and it'll turn gold. This is from Michael Phelps in Genesis, which is the big frog swimming dude. You don't really need this either. The only thing you need here, the mandatory perk, is going to be regenerating. mandatory perk here is going to be leeching and hardy. Hardy so you can dodge 3 times. Leeching because it's lifesteal. For the Greatsword, we're going to Trenton Recovery and Energizing Counter. Once again, with Scarabs being on the market right now, you could just farm yourself like 1 or 2 Scarabs and you can pretty much have this exact same build, no problem. So find one of these dudes wherever you can get it. I found one, I bought like a couple of timeless shards. This cost me like, I think it was like 40k altogether to make this from scratch, which isn't that bad, and I kind of just got unlucky with the perk being Angry Earth. But I mean, we just need those 2 perks. You can use a Scarab to guarantee both of those perks. And likewise for this as well, we just used 1 Scarab and we guaranteed both of these perks, and that's all you really need for the Greatsword in terms of, you know, weapon perks mixed in with your current build. And for the sword and shield, the only thing we really needed was our accelerated Defender's Resolve, and then Leaping Strike. You don't even need Leaping Strike because we're not really attacking on the sword and shield bar all that much anyways. But it's good to have just in case. And Trend Recovery, you could have Lifesteal there as well. And that's pretty much it. For the stone form, particularly we're going to go with Stalwart. This is going to heal us. This is pretty much one of the primary ways that you're going to escape and move with the Greatsword. The Greatsword is fairly immobile. You don't really have much mobility with the current setup that we have. So Stone Form and Leaping Strike are going to be the only ways that you can possibly get away and move out of a sticky situation. But where I end up hunkering down and start fighting is pretty much where the battle is going to be. Either I die over there, or they're going to die over there, but you know, we are pretty stagnant when it comes to combat with this current build. In terms of Runeglass gems, we're using a damage Runeglass gem on the Greatsword, so I'm trying to push as much damage as possible with this without compromising the 2 mandatory perks I want, which is Energizing Counter and Trend Recovery, and without compromising my attributes being 200 Strength and 300 Constitution. So wherever you can get it, so if I get a 3rd perk on this, I'll try and get a DPS perk, whatever, like Attunement, Keen, Vicious, whatever, and keep the Rune Glasses that. In terms of the body, I am not entirely sure if I'm going to put on Rune Glasses over here. If I was, it was going to be leeching, but I have a lot of lifesteal already, and I don't want to compromise my defense for additional lifesteal. So that is, I may play around with it, but at the moment I think I'm just gonna keep things as they are. Plus they're mad expensive right now, so I don't expect anybody to be buying that. It's most definitely not necessary. And that pretty much covers everything I needed to talk about. I will have some gameplay in the back, some gameplay at the end of this, so you can watch the other build plays. And I have so many clips, I'm just gonna upload them one by one. But for this video, I'll just try and consolidate a couple. So feel free to drop a comment below if you have any questions. I read all my comments and I'll answer them. Until next time.